Anna had always believed her marriage to Mark was built on a foundation of trust. Sure, they had their disagreements, who didn't, but they always found a way to meet in the middle. They had been together for over a decade, their love weathering the typical storms of life: job changes, sleepless nights with newborns, and the occasional financial strain. To Anna, their bond was unshakable. That's why the discovery of the affair hit her like a freight train. It started innocuously enough. Mark had gone to bed early, complaining about a headache, leaving Anna to tidy up after dinner. She was clearing the counter when she noticed his phone vibrating with a notification. Normally, Anna wouldn't have thought twice about it. She wasn't the type to snoop. But something about the message caught her attention. The name on the screen read Julie, and the text preview said, "I miss you too. When can we see each other again?" Anna froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Her first instinct was to dismiss it. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, or perhaps it was work. But as she stared at the phone, doubt began to creep in. Who was Julie? And why would she be sending a message like that? Taking a deep breath, Anna picked up the phone. Mark rarely had a lock on his devices, and tonight was no exception. The screen lit up, revealing the full-text conversation. What she saw made her stomach churn. Messages exchanged over the past several months painted a clear picture. Julie wasn't a coworker or a friend. She was Mark's mistress. The texts were filled with declarations of longing and love, plans to meet in secret, and even intimate details that Anna wished she could erase from her memory. She felt sick, as if the ground beneath her feet had vanished. Her mind raced, flipping through the months like a photo album, searching for signs she had missed. Had he been distant lately? Working late too often? She couldn't recall anything obvious, which only made the betrayal sting more. Mark had hidden this part of himself so well that she had no clue her world was crumbling behind the scenes. She stood in the kitchen for what felt like hours, clutching the phone in her trembling hands. Her anger surged, but it was tempered by an overwhelming wave of sadness. This was the man she had built a life with, the father of her children. How could he do this? Eventually, Anna forced herself to act. She marched upstairs, her footsteps deliberate but shaky. When she entered their bedroom, Mark was already asleep, his face peaceful in the dim light. For a fleeting moment, Anna hesitated. She didn't want this to be real, but the truth was staring her in the face, and she couldn't ignore it. "Mark," she said, her voice sharp and cutting through the stillness. He stirred but didn't wake. Anna raised her voice. "Mark!" His eyes opened, squinting in confusion. What's going on?" Anna threw the phone onto the bed beside him. "Care to explain this?" Mark blinked, his confusion quickly replaced by panic as he glanced at the screen. "Anna, I can—" "Don't you dare try to explain this away," she snapped, her voice trembling with rage. "I read everything, Mark. Months of lies. Months of you sneaking around behind my back." He sat up, running a hand through his hair. "Anna, please, let you, what, lie to me some more? Tell me how it's not what it looks like." Her voice cracked and tears welled up in her eyes. "How could you do this to me? To us? To the kids?" Mark buried his face in his hands, groaning. "I screwed up, okay? I made a mistake. But it's over, Anna. It ended months ago." Anna laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "A mistake? Is that what you call it? A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner, Mark. This is a choice. You chose to cheat on me. You chose to lie to me every single day." Mark looked at her, his eyes pleading. "I know I hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I swear it didn't mean anything. It was a stupid, selfish decision, and I regret it more than you can imagine." "Didn't mean anything?" Anna repeated, her voice rising. "It meant enough for you to keep it going for months. It meant enough for you to risk everything we've built together. Don't you dare tell me it didn't mean anything." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavily in the air. Mark didn't try to argue. He knew she was right. Instead, he sat there, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Anna felt a sob rise in her throat, but she swallowed it down. She didn't want to cry in front of him. Not yet. "Do you love her?" she asked quietly. Mark's head snapped up. "No, God no, Anna. I love you. I've always loved you." "Then why?" Her voice broke, the pain spilling out despite her efforts to keep it contained. "Why would you do this to me if you love me?" He hesitated, searching for an answer that wouldn't sound hollow. "I don't know. I was stupid, and I let myself get caught up in something that didn't matter. But it's you I want, Anna. You're my wife. You're the mother of my children. Please, don't let this destroy us." Anna stared at him, her heart aching. Part of her wanted to believe him, to cling to the life they had built together. But another part of her couldn't shake the image of those text messages, the undeniable proof of his betrayal. "I need time," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't even think right now." Mark nodded, his expression filled with regret. "Take all the time you need. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, Anna. I swear." She didn't respond. Instead, she turned and left the room, leaving him sitting alone with his guilt. That night, Anna slept in the guest room, though slept was a generous term. Her mind raced with questions and doubts, her emotions swinging wildly between anger, sadness, and confusion. She thought about their children. How would this affect them? Could she even consider forgiving Mark for their sake? The next morning, Anna woke up feeling like she had aged 10 years overnight. Mark tried to talk to her over breakfast, but she shut him down, saying she wasn't ready. He seemed genuinely remorseful, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental between them had broken. As the days turned into weeks, they began couples therapy, trying to untangle the mess Mark's actions had created. Anna learned more about the affair, how it had started during a particularly stressful time in their lives, how Mark had justified it to himself, and how he had ultimately ended it out of guilt. But no matter how much Mark apologized, or how sincere he seemed, Anna couldn't stop replaying the betrayal in her mind. Every time she looked at him, she saw the man who had broken her heart. Forgiveness, Anna realized, wasn't a decision she could make overnight. It was a process, one that would test her strength and force her to confront the deepest parts of herself. Whether their marriage could survive remained to be seen, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. It had been 6 months since Anna discovered Mark's affair. Though they were still living under the same roof, the atmosphere between them had become cautious and heavy, like a fragile truce. Therapy had helped them find ways to communicate without shouting, but the trust that had once defined their marriage was gone. Anna was trying, really trying, to forgive him for the sake of their children, but the betrayal lingered in her heart like a wound that refused to heal. One crisp autumn morning, Anna was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee and scrolling through emails on her laptop, when her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. The number wasn't saved in her contacts, but it looked vaguely familiar. Hesitant, she answered. "Hello?" A woman's voice came through, soft but tense. "Hi, is this Mark's wife?" Anna's stomach dropped. She gripped the phone tighter, her heartbeat quickening. "Yes," she said carefully. "Who's this?" The woman hesitated. "My name is Clara. I need to speak to Mark. It's important." Anna's mind raced. Who was Clara? Why would she be calling Mark? And how had she gotten Anna's number? For a moment, Anna considered handing the phone to her husband, but something about Clara's tone made her pause. "What's this about?" Anna asked, her voice steady despite the tension building in her chest. I'd rather talk to Mark," Clara said. "Please, just tell him I called." Before Anna could press further, the line went dead. She stared at the phone, her thoughts spinning in a dozen different directions. Clara. The name wasn't familiar, but the way she had spoken, nervous, almost apologetic, felt significant. Anna placed the phone on the table and leaned back in her chair, trying to steady her breathing. Was this woman another piece of Mark's hidden past, or was it something else entirely? She didn't want to jump to conclusions, but after everything that had happened, she couldn't help but feel suspicious. That evening, after the kids were in bed, Anna confronted Mark. He was sitting on the couch, watching TV, when she walked in and stood in front of him, arms crossed. "Who's Clara?" she asked, her voice sharp. Mark blinked up at her, confused. "Clara? I don't know. Why?" "She called me today," Anna said. "Asked to speak to you." Sounded pretty insistent. Mark's expression shifted, a flicker of unease crossing his face before he masked it. "I have no idea who she is," he said, shrugging. "Probably a wrong number." Anna narrowed her eyes. "She knew my name, Mark. And yours. That's not a wrong number." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know what to tell you, Anna. I've never heard of her." Anna studied him, searching for any sign of deception. Mark had become better at hiding his emotions since the affair, and that scared her. She wanted to believe him, but her gut told her there was more to the story. "Fine," she said finally, "but if she calls again, I'll be answering." Mark nodded, but the tension between them was palpable. A week later, Clara called again. This time Anna was prepared. She stepped outside onto the porch to take the call, her voice calm but firm. "Clara," she said, "it's Anna. I need you to tell me why you're calling my husband." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Clara finally spoke, her voice was trembling. "I didn't want to do this over the phone," she said, "but I have a child, and Mark is his father." Anna felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Her grip on the phone tightened as she struggled to process Clara's words. "A child? Mark's child?" "You're lying," Anna said, though her voice lacked conviction. "I'm not," Clara said softly. "I'm sorry you have to find out this way, but it's the truth. I met Mark about 2 years ago. We had a relationship. I didn't know he was married at first, and by the time I found out, I was already pregnant." Anna's knees buckled and she sank onto the porch steps, her mind reeling. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the yard, but all she could do was sit there in stunned silence. "I didn't want to cause problems for you," Clara continued. "That's why I didn't reach out sooner. But I can't do this alone anymore. I've been raising our son on my own, and I need Mark to step up." Anna's voice was barely a whisper. "Why now? Why are you coming to us now?" Clara hesitated. "Because I lost my job. I've been trying to make ends meet, but it's not enough. I didn't want to involve you, but I don't have a choice anymore. I need help." Anna ended the call without another word. Her hands were shaking as she stared at the phone, her thoughts a chaotic mess. How could this be happening? How could Mark have hidden something so monumental from her? When she finally walked back inside, Mark was in the kitchen, rinsing a plate in the sink. He looked up as she entered, and the color drained from his face when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting the plate down. Anna didn't answer. She simply held up her phone and said, "Clara called again." Mark's face went pale, and Anna knew instantly that he recognized the name. He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. "She told me everything," Anna said, her voice cold. "She has a child, your child, and you've been hiding it from me." Mark's shoulders slumped, and he looked away. "Anna, I can explain." "Don't you dare," she snapped. "Don't you dare try to explain this away like you did with the affair. How long were you planning to keep this from me? Were you ever going to tell me?" "I didn't want to hurt you," Mark said quietly. I thought if I kept it a secret, it wouldn't affect us." Anna let out a bitter laugh. "You thought hiding a child wouldn't affect us? Do you hear yourself, Mark? Do you even realize what you've done?" "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't want to lose you." "Well, congratulations," Anna said, tears streaming down her face. Because you might have just done exactly that. She stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Mark standing there, his head in his hands. Upstairs, Anna locked herself in the bathroom and sank to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. She had thought the affair was the worst betrayal she could endure, but this was something else entirely. For the rest of the night, Anna avoided Mark. She didn't know how to face him, how to reconcile the man she had loved for so many years with the man who had kept such a devastating secret. Her mind was filled with questions. What kind of person could do this? And could she ever forgive him? As the sun rose the next morning, Anna stared out the window, exhausted but unable to sleep. She realized she had reached a crossroads. Her marriage was unraveling before her eyes, and she didn't know if it could be saved. But one thing was certain, she couldn't move forward without the truth. All of it. And she was determined to get it, no matter how painful it might be. Anna couldn't sit still. After her confrontation with Mark, her thoughts wouldn't quiet down. She felt like she was living in someone else's nightmare. Her husband, her partner of over a decade, hadn't just betrayed her once with his affair, he had betrayed her on an entirely new level by fathering a child with another woman and hiding it from her. The next morning, Anna sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee she couldn't bring herself to drink. The kids were eating cereal, oblivious to the turmoil raging inside her. Mark sat across from her, trying to act normal, but his silence spoke volumes. Every now and then his eyes darted toward her, filled with guilt and fear. When the kids ran off to play, Anna finally spoke. "You need to tell me everything," she said, her voice low and steady but laced with an unmistakable edge. Mark hesitated. "Anna, No excuses," she interrupted, her eyes locking onto his. "No half-truths. No, I didn't want to hurt you. I've had enough of your lies. You're going to tell me everything right now, or I'm done." Mark swallowed hard and nodded. He could see there was no room for negotiation. "Okay," he said quietly. "But can we talk in private?" Anna stood and led him to their bedroom, shutting the door behind them. She crossed her arms and leaned against the dresser, keeping as much distance between them as possible. "Start from the beginning," she demanded. Mark sat on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped tightly together. "It happened a little over 2 years ago," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "You and I were going through a rough patch. You were so busy with the kids, and I was working long hours. We barely had time for each other. That doesn't excuse anything," Anna said sharply. "I know," he said quickly. "I'm not trying to excuse it. I felt disconnected, like I didn't matter anymore. And then I met Clara." Anna flinched at the sound of her name, but she didn't say anything. "She was a client at work," Mark continued. "We started talking and it felt easy, like she saw me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I know that sounds stupid, but it's the truth. One thing led to another, and we—" "Spare me the details," Anna cut in, her voice cold. Mark nodded, shame-faced. "It went on for a few months. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to end it. Then one day, Clara told me she was pregnant." Anna's stomach churned. She had known this part was coming, but hearing it out loud still felt like a punch to the gut. "What did you do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I panicked," Mark admitted. "I told her I couldn't be involved. I said I'd help financially, but I couldn't be a father to her child. She was furious, of course, but she eventually agreed. We kept things quiet, and I started sending her money every month. I thought I could keep it separate from our life. I didn't want to lose you, Anna. I didn't want to lose the kids." Anna let out a bitter laugh. "So your solution was to lie to me? To let this woman raise your child alone while you played the doting husband and father at home? Do you even hear how pathetic that sounds?" Mark's shoulders sagged. "I know I was a coward. I didn't handle it the way I should have. But I was scared, Anna. I didn't want to destroy our family." "Our family was destroyed the moment you decided to sleep with her," Anna shot back, "and every lie you've told since then has only made it worse." Mark looked up at her, his eyes pleading. "I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I love you, Anna. I love our kids. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this." Anna shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You can't fix this, Mark. You can't undo what you've done. Do you even realize what you've put me through? What you've put Clara through? What about your son? Have you even thought about what this means for him?" Mark looked away, guilt written all over his face. "I've thought about it," he said quietly, "but I didn't know how to handle it. I thought if I stayed away, it would be better for everyone." Anna stared at him in disbelief. "Better for everyone? How is abandoning your child better for anyone? You've been running from your responsibilities for 2 years, Mark. It's time to grow up and face the consequences." She turned and walked out of the room, slamming the door behind her. For the next few days, Anna couldn't stop thinking about Clara and the child, Mark's child. She wondered what kind of life they were living. Were they struggling? Did the boy even know who his father was? The questions gnawed at her, keeping her awake at night. Eventually, Anna decided she needed answers. She called Clara and asked to meet in person. Clara sounded surprised but agreed, suggesting they meet at a small cafe in town. When Anna arrived at the cafe, she spotted Clara immediately. She was younger than Anna had expected, probably in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun and tired eyes that hinted at sleepless nights. She looked nervous as Anna approached the table. "Clara?" Anna asked. Clara nodded, standing to shake Anna's hand. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly. Anna sat down, folding her hands in her lap. "I need to understand what's going on," she said. "I need to hear your side of the story." Clara nodded again, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she began. "When I met Mark, I didn't know he was married. He didn't tell me until months later. By then, I was already pregnant." Anna's heart clenched. She had imagined this conversation 100 times, but hearing it from Clara herself made it all the more real. "I was angry when I found out," Clara continued. "I felt betrayed, just like you do now, but I couldn't change what had happened. I decided to keep the baby, even though Mark said he couldn't be involved. I thought I could do it on my own, but it's been hard." "Does he know?" Anna asked. "Your son? Does he know about Mark?" Clara shook her head. "He's too young to understand. He's only 1.5 years. But one day he'll start asking questions, and I don't know what I'll tell him." Anna swallowed the lump in her throat. She hated what Mark had done, but she couldn't deny that Clara and her son were victims in this too. "I don't know what's going to happen," Anna said finally, "but I need time to figure it out. This changes everything." Clara nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. "Take all the time you need. I just want what's best for my son. That's all I care about." As Anna left the cafe, her mind was spinning. She knew her marriage was hanging by a thread, and she wasn't sure if it could be saved. But one thing was clear. The truth was out now, and there was no going back. The weeks that followed Anna's meeting with Clara were some of the most difficult of her life. Every day felt like a balancing act, teetering between anger, sadness, and confusion. She couldn't look at Mark without hearing Clara's words echo in her mind. "I just want what's best for my son." Anna had spent years building a life with Mark. A marriage, a home, a family. And now, all of it felt fragile, like a house of cards ready to collapse at any moment. Yet as much as she wanted to walk away, she also couldn't ignore the small voice in the back of her mind that kept asking, "What about the kids? What about the family we've already built?" But forgiveness wasn't something Anna could force, and as she wrestled with the weight of Mark's betrayal, she knew there was only one way forward: clarity. Everything had to be put on the table. No more secrets, no more lies. Only then could she decide if their marriage had a future. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Anna told Mark they needed to talk. He looked nervous, but he followed her into the living room where she had already set 2 glasses of water on the coffee table. She sat down, gesturing for him to do the same. "This is it, Mark," Anna began, her voice steady but firm. "We're not going to keep circling around this. You're going to tell me everything you've been hiding, and then we're going to figure out what happens next." Mark nodded, his shoulders slumping as though the weight of the conversation was already bearing down on him. "I'll tell you anything you want to know," he said quietly. Anna took a deep breath. "First, I need to understand why you thought you could hide this. Did you really believe I'd never find out?" Mark hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "At the time, I wasn't thinking long-term," he admitted. "When Clara told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I knew I'd messed up and I didn't know how to fix it. All I could think about was keeping it from you so I wouldn't lose you. I thought, if I just sent her money and kept my distance, it wouldn't have to affect our life." I shook my head. "And yeah, but it did affect our life," Anna said, her voice rising. "You don't just get to walk away from something like that and pretend it doesn't exist. Did you ever even consider what this would do to Clara? Or to your son?" Mark looked down, shame written all over his face. "I know I was selfish," he said. "I told myself I was protecting you, but really, I was just trying to protect myself. I didn't want to deal with the consequences of what I'd done." Anna shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "And now you've made it my problem, too. You didn't just betray me, Mark. You betrayed our family. You betrayed the future we were building together." "I know," Mark said, his voice breaking. "And I hate myself for it. I've made so many mistakes, Anna. But I love you. I love our kids. And I want to fix this, even if it takes the rest of my life." Anna closed her eyes, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that he was capable of change, but trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight. "You say you want to fix this," she said finally. "But fixing it isn't just about me. It's about that little boy, too. He's your son, Mark. You can't keep pretending he doesn't exist." Mark looked up at her, his eyes filled with desperation. "What do you want me to do?" Anna hesitated. She had spent countless nights wrestling with that very question. What did she want him to do? Part of her wanted to walk away from it all, to leave Mark and his mistakes behind. But another part of her, the part that still loved him despite everything, wanted to find a way forward. "You need to be honest with Clara," Anna said. "You need to take responsibility for your son, not just financially but emotionally. He deserves to know who his father is." Mark nodded slowly, though the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. "I'll do it," he said. "Whatever it takes, I'll do it." But Anna wasn't finished. "And as for us, I don't know if I can forgive you, Mark. Not yet, maybe not ever. But if we're going to have any chance of moving forward, you need to earn back my trust. And that starts with being honest. About everything." Mark reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I mean it, Mark," she said. "No more secrets, no more lies. If you can't give me that, then we're done." The next few weeks were a blur of difficult conversations and raw emotions. Mark reached out to Clara, apologizing for the way he had treated her and offering to be more involved in their son's life. Clara was understandably hesitant, but she agreed to let Mark visit the boy under certain conditions. Anna, meanwhile, struggled with her own feelings of betrayal and resentment. Watching Mark take steps to repair his relationship with Clara and their son was painful, like reopening a wound that had barely begun to heal. But it was also a reminder that the situation was bigger than her marriage. There was an innocent child at the center of it all, and he deserved better than the mess Mark had created. One Saturday afternoon, Anna went with Mark to meet the boy for the first time. They had agreed to meet Clara at a local park, where her son could play while they talked. Anna's stomach was in knots as they approached the playground, unsure of what to expect. When she saw the boy, his dark hair and bright blue eyes so much like Mark's, her heart ached. He was beautiful, and he deserved a father who would love and support him. Anna watched as Mark knelt down to introduce himself, his voice trembling with emotion. "Hi," Mark said gently. I'm your dad." The boy looked up at him, his eyes wide with curiosity. Clara stood nearby, watching nervously as the moment unfolded. Anna stayed in the background, giving them space but keeping a close eye on the interaction. She felt a mixture of emotions, sadness, anger, and a faint glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be the first step toward healing. Over time, Mark began to build a relationship with his son. It wasn't easy. There were awkward moments and difficult conversations, but he was determined to make things right. Anna, too, found herself slowly coming to terms with the situation. She didn't know if she could ever fully forgive Mark, but she could see that he was trying, and for now, that was enough. As the months passed, Anna and Mark continued to work on their marriage. They attended therapy together, learning how to communicate and rebuild trust. It wasn't a perfect process, and there were days when Anna felt like giving up. But there were also moments of connection, small but significant reminders of why she had fallen in love with Mark in the first place. In the end, Anna realized that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing what had happened. It was about choosing to move forward, one step at a time. And while their marriage would never be the same, it didn't mean it couldn't be rebuilt into something new. On a crisp spring morning, Anna stood in the kitchen, watching as Mark played with their children in the backyard. She still had doubts, still had wounds that hadn't fully healed, but for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. Life was messy and complicated, full of mistakes and heartbreak, but it was also full of second chances. And for Anna, that was enough to keep going.